Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to debate the future of the inshore fishing fleet on the East Coast. This is a matter which is of great importance both to the fishing fleet in Lowestoft in my constituency and also to other ports along the East Coast and elsewhere around Britain. Whilst there is much wrong with the way the industry is governed today, I shall say from the outset that I exempt from any criticism my honourable friend, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Natural Environment and Fisheries. As both a shadow minister and now a minister, he has spent a great deal of time travelling around the coast, meeting and listening to fishermen, hearing at first hand their worries, and subsequently doing what he can to address these concerns. This includes obtaining additional sole quota in August, when the East Coast fleet had no fish to catch. Last month with me, he met Lowestoft fishermen and discussed with them the problems that they face. He has subsequently come back with considerable speed to set up a meeting for a delegation of fishermen from Lowestoft to meet him in Whitehall in December to discuss their plight more fully. Much of Lowestoft as it stands today was built on the back of the fishing industry. As well as a substantial deep-sea fleet, a network of supporting industries grew up, including shipbuilding, net and rope manufacturing and processing factories. Ross Foods has long since gone, though Birdseye remain as an important employer, though no longer processing fish from their factory in the town. The railway used to run into the fish market, and fish that was sold in the morning was on London dinner tables in the evening. Fresh fish from Lowestoft was and still is an evocative cry, though sometimes today it rings hollow. This is because the fishing industry is much diminished and is facing a fight for its very survival. Most of the deep-sea trawlers have long gone, as have all but one of the shipyards and many of the supporting industries. However, an inshore fleet remains, which with the right policy framework not only can survive, but can also flourish. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am conscious that time is short. I shall first set out the problems that the fleet faces, not only in Lowestoft, but along the East Coast. And then I shall conclude with a few thoughts as to how a sustainable and financially viable long-term future can be secured. As I see it today, inshore fishermen face 5 problems. Firstly, the common fisheries policy is over-centralised and fails to respond to local needs. It is too cumbersome, unwieldy and centralised. The forthcoming review in 2012 provides an opportunity to address this problem. Secondly, the regime palpably fails to achieve its prime objective of conserving fish stocks and causes untold damage to the marine environment. Young fish are caught before they mature, and there are inadequate incentives for the long-term management of stocks. My third point is that the British under 10-metre fleet gets a raw deal. They make up 85% of the British fishing fleet. I give it way to the Honourable Lady.
Does my honourable friend agree with me that the Minister has inherited a disastrous problem with the under 10-metre quota situation? With the party opposite, when they were in government, first introducing the fixed quota allocations, underpinning the under 10-metre quota to a grossly underestimated figure, and then failing to address the situation when it came to light with the registration of buyers and sellers, our Minister has actually inherited a problem due to the inaction of the party opposite when they were in government.
I thank the Honourable Lady for that intervention, and yes, the Minister has inherited an inevitable problem. There is a common perception that all fishermen have overfished the sea, and they are now reaping their own whirlwind. However, it is important to distinguish between deep-sea trawlers and the inshore fleet, who fish in a sustainable way with long lines. The quota system that is meant to conserve fish stocks has spawned the obscene practice of discards. What happens is that fishermen go out to sea, and once they have reached their quota, they throw back perfectly healthy fish which they are not able to land due to the threat of criminal prosecution hanging over their heads. A Lowestoft fisherman has told me how only 2 weeks ago, in 5 days, he had to throw back dead 1,300 kilograms of skate. There are 8 other similar-sized boats that have probably been forced to do the same thing. That makes 11,700 kilograms of dead skate thrown back into the sea in just 5 days. That's 11.5 tonnes in one fishery. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when one takes into account that this is happening all around the British coast, the waste, destruction, and pouring of money into the sea is mind-boggling. In this fisherman's words, this system not only stops him from making a living and making long-term business investment plans, but it is decimating a national resource. If he was allowed to land just 20% of his discards, he could cover his expenses instead of operating at a substantial loss. The final problem that we face is that quota has become a tradable commodity with legal entitlement. It is often owned by faceless investors known as slipper skippers, who have no connection with the fishing industry. They then lease out the quota to fishermen at a substantial profit. This should be contrasted with the sugar beet regime, where ownership of the quota remains with British Sugar, who make it available to individual farmers, both large and small. Mr. Speaker, these problems have created a frankly ridiculous and unsustainable situation. As I mentioned earlier, most of the deep-sea trawlers have left Lowestoft. However, they still operate and fish the same grounds, though as the quota was sold to Belgium, the boats are now based in Belgium. Now and then, the boats come to rest in Lowestoft, where the catch is unloaded and then driven by lorry to Belgium and Holland. Much of it is then bought by Lowestoft-based processors and then driven or flown back. That is the position in which the inshore fishing fleet finds itself today. If this regime remains unchanged, the fleet, both in Lowestoft and elsewhere around the UK coast, will cease to exist. It is important to remember that just like farmers are the guardians of the land, fishermen are the custodians of the sea. None of them wish to be aboard the vessel that catches the last fish. They all have an interest in creating and then managing sustainable fisheries. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there is a solution, there is a way forward, and there is a better way of running the industry. I do not have the answers myself, nor do the bureaucrats or officials, but I do know the people who do. It's the fishermen, the scientists, and those others who work in the industry. I now set out 5 ways in which the situation can be improved. These are based on proposals put forward by the World Wildlife Fund and those running the East Sea Fisheries District. Firstly, there must be a move away from the current top-down micromanagement. The EU's role should be set at a high level with high-level objectives. The Commission should not get involved in the day-to-day management of fisheries around such a large and diverse continent. This moves me to my second point, that this day-to-day management should be carried out locally by fishermen, scientists such as at CFAS, who have their headquarters in Lowestoft, and representatives from the MMO and DEFRA. These are the people who know the fisheries best. Such an approach, with management decisions being taken by those who are involved in each specific fishery, is very much the big society in action. It involves politicians getting out of the way, departing the scene, and leaving those who know best to run their own industries. The quota system should be relaxed and replaced with a maximum hours at sea means of maintaining fish stocks and controlling fishing. This will eliminate discards, with fishing hours being varied over a year to take account of the level of stocks and weather conditions. If necessary, fisheries can be closed when stocks run low. My fourth point is that it is important to use science in the future management of fisheries, both monitoring the amount of fish caught and recording fishing activity. For example, a vessel monitoring system, a VMS, could be fitted to all vessels. This would provide detailed information on the state and seasonality of individual fisheries. This will help provide better information to assist in marine planning decisions, not only fishing, but also wind farms, dredging, and marine conservation zones. This brings me to my final point. I am mindful today that the North Sea is an increasingly crowded place. As well as fishing grounds, there are shipping lanes, dredging areas, and wind farms. The latter have an important role to play in Lowestoft's future, but more on that another day. It is important that the marine environment is managed in a sustainable and responsible way. The Marine and Coastal Access Act 2009 provides a framework in which this can take place, though it is important that decision-making takes place locally, that all interested parties are involved, and decisions are made promptly with the benefit of all the facts that science can provide. At the current time, the outlook for the fishing industry in Lowestoft and along the eastern coast does not appear bright. However, in the past, Lowestoft has adopted change and has bounced back. The challenge that politicians across Europe must address as a matter of the highest priority is to provide a proper policy framework in which the inshore fleet can rejuvenate itself and move forward, providing a fair living for all those who work in it. The comments of Fisheries Commissioner Maria Damanaki, as reported in today's Financial Times, do provide encouragement that the seriousness of the situation is now appreciated. The Sam Cole Food Group, fourth-generation Lowestoft fish merchants, have recently made a bold decision and invested £2.5 million in a new processing factory. We owe it to them and all those working in the fishing industry in Lowestoft and elsewhere around the British coast to do all we can to reverse 30 years of decline of an industry which is at the heart of this island nation. I personally will not sit back and rest until a fishing regime that has almost destroyed the Lowestoft fishing industry is itself discarded and thrown overboard. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Laura Sands.